Well, hello, and welcome back. I am restreaming the same thing I just streamed because I forgot to share my desktop while we were going over this. So this is still the marrying of our Markdown, Bash, and server skills together so that we can put that all together and host our simple website. So what I'm going to do is actually get out of, I was in our server, well, the server. Oh, actually, before I get started, let me not forget. We are accepting comments by Imperial We. I'm taking a look at comments on Facebook and on YouTube and on Twitch, and there are links to all of those in the description if you prefer to switch over to a different platform. If there's any technical difficulties, this is actually going to get edited just a tiny itsy bit. We're going to strip out this beginning bit, and then if there's any technical difficulties, we'll strip that out, and that'll get posted to the Beyond Code channel. So you can follow @_Beyond Code on Twitter to see when those get released. For example, this. And with that, we are ready to get into it. I'm going to go ahead and clap for the video audio sync during editing. All right. So what we're doing here is marrying together our Markdown, Bash, and server skills as we've covered over this past week so that we can produce a very, very simple and kind of ugly but functional website using Markdown. Okay? So the first thing that I'm going to do is log into the server. So you should have in the earlier episode created your own domain. On name.com is what I recommend, or through DuckDNS if you're not ready to get your domain, but I highly recommend you get one. I just happen to be using DuckDNS for this. So here I've put SSH, the domain name. We've already mapped the IP address to the domain. We've already set up our key. If you want to watch that, you can check in the description for the previous videos. And here I am at our server. And I'm going to do ls to list, and what we see is that we have a caddy file. That's our web server. That's a configuration for our web server. We have an SRV folder, which is something I created, just kind of a common convention to call things that the web server serves, or create a folder called SRV for the things the web server serves, and www for the public parts that are the plain, anybody can access these parts. And then inside of that, we have a folder the same name as the domain. This is just, again, convention. It doesn't mean anything special. I could name this blah, but then it would be stupid. So that's what we have in our configuration file. I'm going to go ahead and go into, I'm not going to go into this yet. I'm not going to push you into this yet. I'm going to do one more thing first. I'm going to go ahead and run our web server. Here we are. And we're going to go and see what our website looks like right now, which is, this is where we left it, hello world, not super functional. So hopefully you've been taking notes. So you went to gist.github.com, you'd created an account, you've got a file named beyondcodenotes.md, and you've got your notes over the past week of things that you've done. So we're going to take that, split it out into multiple Markdown files, and we're going to create our website from that. So I hit Control-C to cancel the server. I'm going to go into the Beyond Code directory, and I already did a little bit of this work ahead of time. So you can see that there is an src folder, and inside of that, I've already taken some notes and split them into a couple of different files and started on my index.md. All of these are going to get converted to HTML, so we're going to create a copy of these files that has a .html extension, and the index.html is the special file that gets loaded when we don't give it a file path. So if we do index.html here, oh, except our web server is not started. Anyway, whether we put the file name there or we just leave the directory name, meaning the slash, it still loads the index.html. So that's still going to be true. And I'm going to go ahead to showcase this. No, I'm not going to do that. Never mind. So let me go ahead and use cat. We'll show you what's inside of these files. So here's my how domains work, my Markdown file. This is it right here. So very, very short blog article. And we're going to convert that with a utility called comrack into HTML. I'll just show you that again. So you go to webinstall.dev. Whoops, don't go to that one. You go to webinstall.dev. This is a nice little installer. This is the fastest, most secure, easiest way to install developer tools for yourself. So now copying and pasting this install command, we now have the Webby command. And so we can type Webby and the name of one of the other developer tools that we use, and then it'll go and download that. And sometimes you'll see there are additional instructions, so you do need to read that. Often it's just you either need to copy and paste or exit and reopen the terminal so that some things finish initializing. But here, everything's already set up and ready to go. And one thing that we do need to do, we covered this last time, but I'll go ahead and show it again. So I'm going to go to the ComRack cheat sheet here on webinstall.dev. And typically what we want to do is add at least these couple of options and sometimes more depending on what we're doing. But I don't want to have to type that out every time I use it. So instead, I'll give you an example of this real quick just as a recap. So if I do my intro, mastering Markdown, and I'm not going to direct it to a file, I'm just going to let it come out to the screen. I already set this up, so I'm going, pay no attention. Don't worry about what I'm doing. I'm just deleting a config file. Okay, so now when I print this out to the screen, I convert it from Markdown to HTML. You'll notice there's still some Markdown in there. We talked about this a little bit before. So we just need to create a configuration file that says turn on the special Markdown options that we typically want. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm just saying echo these couple of options, putting in a config file, and this is special to the way that ComRack works. So other programs don't necessarily work the same way, but that's just a copy and paste. And now when I run ComRack again, I'm going to clear the screen here so we're nice and clean. I'm going to run it again. Now you'll notice that the Markdown was all converted into HTML. We don't have any table stuff there, except for we do have some Markdown that is left as Markdown on purpose because it was in a code block. But we'll see that in just a second. Okay, so that's kind of the recap. And now what we're going to do is we're going to create HTML files for each one of these. So a little bit of a tedious process. And I'm going to go ahead and check comments real quick. Do I see any comments? Do I see any comments? Do I see any comments? Okay, no comments. Great. So we've got how domains work. I'm going to go ahead and forward that into a file. And this is, we're going to use the /. Remember, we talked about print working directory, the current working directory. So the directory we're in is /. And so we're going to create this file just like so. Same name, but with a .html extension. Oh, and by the way, it's very common to put your source files in a directory called src. So when you've got files that are in one format and you're going to convert them into another format, or you're going to compile them or transpile them or convert them, it's common to call that directory src. It's not common to put it where the web server has access to it, but in this case, we're doing that because we're cool that way. So here we go. I'm going to do, the next one was I think it was how to set up your server. Yeah, so we got that. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to put a .html extension on this instead of MD. So now you can see we've got our old index.html. We've got our new files that I just created. Everything is still in the source directory just as it was. We haven't deleted anything. We're making a copy that is in HTML format, like I said. So next one is going to be intro to the shell. And oops, I don't want to overwrite the previous one there. So just copy and paste. And then we've only got one more of these, so don't fret. I know this is a little boring, but it's good to do some of the repetitive stuff just to drill it in and get some of that muscle memory. So here we go. This is the last one that we're going to do. Okay, so now we've got our 4 files. We could view these as HTML, but we actually don't want to have to give the full path to these to be able to access them from our web server. So I had started on an index.md, which is my main blog page. This is going to replace our hello world, but I need to add my latest blog article, Mastering Markdown, which is going to be Intro to Mastering Markdown.html. And again, with the going back to print working directory, the reason that these start with a ./ because I told you last time, it's https:// always. Well, there is one exception. And that is you don't, when you are building a site and you're referencing a file that's within your own site, the link that you use doesn't necessarily need to start with the full path of your site and your domain. More typically, it is ./ and then the path to the file. So at the root of our site, we have an index.html is what we're going to convert this into. And then we just created all of these other .html files, and they're at that same level. If we created a folder called blog and we put them under that, then we would need to prefix it like this. So that's what that's about right there. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and create our index.html as well. Oops, index.html. So we're going to replace it. It's going to delete the one that's there currently. We're not going to have that hello world page anymore. So now, if I try to go to the site and I hit refresh, oh no, the server's not running. So I push D to get into this directory. I can do a pop D to get out of the directory to go back to where I was before. I could also do push D and then put a tilde to take me back to the home directory because that's where we're working from. But I personally prefer to keep track of where I go in and where I go out of and know which directories I've been in recently because I like to push and pop a lot. Anyway, so we do caddy run caddy file. Our server spits out some logs that look a little bit janky because the screen's not wide enough because we're trying to fit everything right here. And now I can see I've got my blog, and if I click on the link, I've got all of my articles, and I got my reference links. Here's the thing. If you're lazy, which I hope that you're not, I hope you take the time to make sensible notes for yourself. But if you are lazy, the very least that you should do is write one sentence about what the goal was that you were trying to accomplish, hopefully a code snippet that shows an example of what the solution was or what the too long didn't read bit was, and then list references to the other things. If nothing else, keep a blog just to list references by topic. If you make it just one page, keep a list of references of things that have been useful for you because you'll want to access them again, I promise it. Okay, and my last link here, this was the one where I had my Markdown table with examples of Markdown and then what they end up looking like. So there we are. That's my full blog. Now, obviously, this isn't very pretty. In the future, there's a couple things that are coming up. We need to go through a couple of computer science topics first. So we're going to continue on this server website setup train for tomorrow. But then after that, next week, we're going to intersperse some more computer science and general programming topics. But we will get back around to this and continue with where we're at. So one thing that we need to do is we need to add some style to this so it doesn't look so ugh. Also, I'm going to go ahead and stop the server now so I can go back into that directory. We're going to talk about how you run your server, your web server, on your Digital Ocean server. We use the term server for with the hardware that the software runs on and the software itself. So sorry for if there's been any confusion there. But we're gonna talk about how you run the server as a service. Oh, yet another multiplexing of the word server, so that you don't have to run it every time. And when you exit out of being logged into SSH, it doesn't just stop the server and your server not run anymore. I will note that if you go to the Caddy cheat sheet, I know some of this is probably a little bit more advanced than what you're ready for, but if you want to dig around on here, I actually do talk about how to do that with Caddy, just as a heads up if you don't want to wait for me to come up with that. But we want to talk about that. And then the other thing that we're gonna continue on with this is This is really great. We're able to do this by hand. We want to automate it just a touch. Just in doing this, hopefully you got enough muscle memory there of you're learning how to run commands and do that sort of thing. But it'd be nice if we made a change to a file, we didn't have to go in and rerun that specific file. And if we add a new file for our blog, we don't have to rerun, copy and pasting the file name in order to create the HTML file and then go update the index. What would be nice is if we had a little script that would read all the files that are in the blog source directory, would create that index file that lists all the blogs on our behalf, and would generate it so that whenever we edit a file or we add a new file, we could just run our build.sh script file, and that file would do the work for us. So that's something that's going to be coming up. Now, if at any time you had a little aha moment and this was helpful, please go ahead and give it a thumbs up. If you want to follow along and see more of the computer science topics, as well as these DevOps style topics, learning basic command line, Linux, Mac, servers, that sort of thing, please go ahead and subscribe. And if you've got any questions about anything in the programming world, go ahead and send them to me @_beyondcode on Twitter, or in one of these comments here. With that, I want to thank you very much for joining in tonight. And if you come again, then I will see you again. Well, without the site, because we can't see each other and all that. But anyway, I hope you have the best night ever. Adios.